My name's Emily, and I'm 32. Just hours ago, I gave birth to my son, a tiny miracle in my arms. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and hope, and I was exhausted, but so happy. My 8-year-old daughter Abigail is my world. We've faced tough times together, just us two. When she walked in, clutching her old teddy bear, her face was pale. She shut the curtain, leaned close, and whispered, "Mom, get under the bed." Now, my heart stopped. Why was she so scared? What did she know that I didn't? Have you ever trusted a child's gut feeling? Hit like and subscribe to find out what happened next. Where are you watching from? Let me know below. Under the hospital bed, the floor was cold and gritty dust clinging to my palms. Abigail's small hand gripped mine, her fingers trembling. My newborn son cooed softly in the bassinet above, oblivious to the fear choking me. I wanted to check on him to hold him, but Abigail's wide eyes kept me frozen. She pressed a finger to her lips, her breath shallow. The curtain rustled, and heavy boots thudded against the tile. A man's voice, low and rough, cut through the air. "The woman in 304. "Where is she?" he asked. My stomach twisted. "That was my room." "The nurse," Clara answered brightly. "She's probably resting." "New mom, you know." Her tone was carefree, like she was chatting about the weather. I wanted to scream at her to pay attention to see the danger, but Abigail's hand tightened, grounding me. Her teddy bear was wedged between us, its worn fur brushing my arm. I could feel her heart racing through her thin sweater. Why was she so sure we needed to hide? My mind scrambled, replaying her urgent whisper the way she'd shut the curtain with such purpose. I thought back to a time when Abigail was 6. I'd brought her to my old job at a diner, and she'd tugged my sleeve, pointing at a coworker. "Mom, he's sneaky," she'd said. I laughed it off, but a week later, that guy swiped cash from my bag. Abigail's instincts were sharp, always had been. But this felt bigger, scarier. My chest ached with the weight of not knowing. Was I overreacting? Or was she seeing something I couldn't? The man's boots paced closer, stopping just beyond the curtain. "Resting." "Huh? Mind if I take a look?" His voice had an edge, like he was testing Clara. My pulse hammered in my ears. Abigail leaned closer, her breath warm against my cheek. "I saw him outside," she whispered, so quiet I barely caught it. "In the parking lot when we got here. He was watching us." My blood ran cold. Watching us, I'd been so focused on my contractions, on getting to the hospital. I hadn't noticed anything. Clara laughed, clueless. "Family only for now. You a relative?" The man didn't answer right away, and the silence was worse than his voice. I pictured him tall, maybe with a face I didn't know, staring at my son's bassinet. My hands shook, itching to grab my baby and run. But the space under the bed was tight, my body still sore from labor. Moving would make noise. Abigail's eyes locked on mine, pleading for me to stay still. I nodded, swallowing hard. The boot shifted, and I heard the faint jingle of keys or coins in his pocket. "Just a friend," he said finally, his tone smoother now, like he'd rehearsed it. "I'll come back." The words sent a shiver down my spine. Come back? For what? For me. For Abigail. My mind flashed to my ex-husband Nathan, who'd vanished 4 years ago after leaving us drowning in his mess. Could this be tied to him? No, I told myself. He was gone. But the doubt lingered sharp and unwelcome. Clara's voice faded as she walked away, chatting with another nurse about her lunch break. I wanted to trust her to believe she'd protect us, but her nonchalance stung. She'd brushed off Abigail's nervousness earlier, saying kids make up stories. I'd smiled weakly then, too tired to argue, but now I regretted it. Abigail wasn't making this up. The man's boots retreated, the sound growing fainter, but Abigail didn't move. Her hand stayed over mine, steady despite her fear. "Mom," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He was on the phone outside. I heard him say, "She's here. Just had the kid." My breath caught. She'd heard that. How had she kept this to herself? My heart sank, picturing her in the parking lot, clutching her bear, catching words that weren't meant for her. I wanted to ask more to understand, but the air felt thick with danger. The bassinet creaked slightly, and I tensed, terrified my son was stirring. Abigail's gaze flicked upward, then back to me. She was protecting him too. I squeezed her hand, trying to stay calm for her. But inside, I was unraveling. Who was this man? Why was he asking for me? And how did Abigail know to hide? The questions piled up, each one heavier than the last. I felt trapped, not just under the bed, but in a world where my daughter saw threats I couldn't. The hospital, which had felt safe hours ago, now seemed like a maze of shadows. And then softer footsteps approached, different from the boots. My heart leapt. Was he back already? Or was it someone else? The softer footsteps paused just outside the curtain, and my chest tightened. Abigail's grip on my hand grew fiercer, her nails digging into my skin. The hospital's hum of monitors and distant voices felt far away, drowned out by the thud of my pulse. I strained to listen, praying it was just another nurse. Then a woman's voice, sharp and jittery, broke the silence. "Clara? Is she still in there? I need to see her." It was my sister Rachel. My relief soured into confusion. Why did she sound so panicked? Clara's cheery tone answered, "Rachel, relax. She's probably napping. Babies wear you out." I pictured Clara's easy smile, the one that had grated on me earlier. Rachel didn't respond, but her shoes squeaked as she paced. Abigail leaned closer, her whisper barely a breath. "Mom, Aunt Rachel was acting weird yesterday. She kept checking her phone, locking her door." My stomach sank. Weird how I hadn't noticed anything off. I'd been so caught up in packing my hospital bag, timing contractions. My mind raced back to last month. Rachel had shown up at my apartment, eyes red, asking for a loan. $500, she'd said, for car repairs. I gave it to her, no questions, because that's what sisters do. She promised to pay me back, but never did. I let it slide, figuring she was stressed. Now, under this bed, her nervous energy felt like a puzzle piece I'd ignored. Was she in trouble? Was that why she was here, sounding like she was unraveling? The curtain swished, and Rachel's voice dropped low. "Clara, I'm serious. I need to know where she is." There was a tremble in her words, not just worry, but something deeper, like fear. Clara laughed softly. "You're acting like she's missing. Check the bathroom or something." My jaw clenched. Clara's dismissiveness was maddening. I wanted to crawl out, demand answers, but Abigail's eyes held me back, wide and unblinking. She knew something I didn't, and that scared me more than Rachel's voice. Rachel's shoes clicked closer, stopping inches from the bed. I held my breath, my sore body aching against the hard floor. My son's soft gurgles from the bassinet above felt like a beacon drawing danger. I imagined Rachel peering at him, her face tense. What was she looking for? Me? Or something else? Abigail's hand shook in mine, and I squeezed back, trying to steady her. My mind churned. Rachel had been my rock when Nathan walked out, helping with Abigail's school runs, cooking dinners when I worked late. Could she be caught up in whatever this was? Then Rachel's phone buzzed, a harsh sound in the quiet. She answered in a hushed tone. "She's not here. Try the other wards." My heart stopped. Who was she talking to? The man with the boots? Someone else? The words echoed in my head, cold and deliberate. Try the other wards. Like I was prey being hunted. Abigail's face paled, her lips pressed tight. She'd heard it too. I wanted to ask her what she knew, but the air felt too heavy, too dangerous for words. Rachel's voice softened, almost pleading. Just hurry. Okay, I can't do this much longer. The call ended, and her shoes scuffed as she turned away. My chest burned with a mix of fear and betrayal. Rachel, my sister was part of this, the sister who'd braided my hair as a kid, who'd cried with me when Mom died. It didn't make sense, but her words were undeniable. She was helping someone find me, and I didn't know why. Clara's voice piped up again, oblivious. Rachel, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Rachel muttered something I couldn't catch. Then her footsteps faded down the hall. Silence settled, but it wasn't comforting. My body trembled, not just from the cold floor, but from the weight of what I'd heard. Abigail wasn't making this up. The man's boots retreated, the sound growing fainter, but Abigail didn't move. Her hand stayed over mine, steady despite her fear. Mom, she whispered, her voice barely audible. He was on the phone outside. I heard him say, "She's here. Just had the kid." My breath caught. She'd heard that. When how had she kept this to herself? My heart sank, picturing her in the parking lot clutching her bear, catching words that weren't meant for her. I wanted to ask more to understand, but the air felt thick with danger. The bassinet creaked slightly, and I tensed, terrified my son was stirring. Abigail's gaze flicked upward, then back to me. She was protecting him too. I squeezed her hand, trying to stay calm for her, but inside I was unraveling. Who was this man? Why was he asking for me, and how did Abigail know to hide? The questions piled up, each one heavier than the last. I felt trapped, not just under the bed, but in a world where my daughter saw threats I couldn't. The hospital, which had felt safe hours ago, now seemed like a maze of shadows. And then softer footsteps approached, different from the boots. My heart leapt. Was he back already? Or was it someone else? The creak in the hallway stopped, replaced by a low hum, like someone was singing to themselves. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might give us away. Abigail's small body pressed closer, her bear squished between us, its button eye digging into my side. The hospital bed's underside pressed against my back, the metal frame biting into my skin. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the ache inside. My sister was out there directing someone to hunt me, and I was trapped, a new mom with 2 kids depending on me, unable to move. The humming grew louder, and I realized it was coming from inside the room. Slow, deliberate steps shuffled across the tile, not the heavy boots from before, but lighter, uneven. I peeked through the gap under the curtain, catching a glimpse of a janitor's worn sneakers and the edge of a mop. My shoulders relaxed a fraction, but Abigail's grip didn't loosen. "It's just the janitor," I whispered, barely audible. She shook her head, her eyes sharp with fear. "He was outside earlier, Mom, with Aunt Rachel." My stomach twisted. Was everyone in this hospital part of some conspiracy, the janitor? Marcus, I think his name was, dragged the mop in lazy circles, his humming a tuneless drone. I remembered seeing him yesterday pushing a cart, his gray hair tucked under a cap. He'd smiled at Abigail, offered her a sticker from his pocket. I'd thought it was sweet. Now his presence felt like another thread in a web I couldn't untangle. Was he watching us too? My mind raced, piecing together Rachel's nervous pacing, her cryptic call, and now this. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the weight of Abigail's trust kept me silent. Marcus's mop sloshed closer, water dripping inches from the bed. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't look down. Abigail's hand was clammy in mine, her fear feeding mine. I thought of Rachel again, her voice trembling on that call. I can't do this much longer. What was she doing? Who was she afraid of? My sister had been my rock since we were kids, sharing secrets under blankets, promising to always have each other's backs. When Nathan left, she'd moved in for a month, cooking Abigail's favorite mac and cheese, holding me when I cried. That Rachel wouldn't sell me out. But the Rachel I'd heard minutes ago, I didn't know her. My chest tightened with a mix of anger and grief. I'd trusted her with everything, my fears, my dreams, even Abigail's school schedule. Had she been playing me all along? Last week, she'd come over distracted, checking her phone every 5 minutes. I'd asked if she was okay, and she'd snapped, "Just work stuff, Emily. Drop it." I did because I was tired, because I was pregnant, because I didn't want to fight. Now that moment felt like a warning I'd ignored. My throat burned. How could I have been so blind? The mop stopped, and Marcus's humming faltered. My heart lurched. Had he seen us? The curtain shifted slightly, and I froze, my sore body screaming from the cramped position. Abigail's eyes were wide, her lips trembling. I wanted to pull her close to promise everything would be okay, but I couldn't lie. Not now. Marcus coughed a dry, rattling sound, then shuffled toward the door. "Gotta check the next ward," he muttered to himself, his voice gruff. The next ward. The same words Rachel had used. My blood ran cold. Was he part of this too, or was I losing it? The door clicked shut, and silence returned, but it wasn't peaceful. My mind churned, replaying every moment with Rachel. The loan she never repaid. The way she'd avoided my eyes lately. The late-night calls she'd step outside to take. Each memory was a knife carving away the trust I'd built with her. Abigail shifted her voice a faint whisper. "Mom, I didn't tell you, but yesterday, Aunt Rachel was packing a bag at her house. She told me not to tell you." My heart sank deeper. Packing a bag, why to run? To hide something. I squeezed Abigail's hand, trying to stay strong for her. "What else did you see, sweetie?" I asked, my voice barely steady. She hesitated, her eyes darting to the floor. There was a note in her purse. I wasn't snooping, I swear. It said, "Meet at hospital. Bring the cash." My breath caught. Cash? For what? My mind flashed to Nathan's old gambling debts, the ones that had drained our savings before he vanished. Was Rachel tangled up with his old crowd? The thought made me sick, but it fit too well to ignore. Anger surged hot and sharp. Rachel knew how Nathan's debts had broken us, how I'd worked double shifts to keep Abigail fed. She'd seen me cry over his betrayal, and now she was dragging me back into his mess. I wanted to confront her, to shake her, until she explained. But the fear in Abigail's eyes held me back. My daughter was scared, and I was all she had. I couldn't fall apart, not yet. My son whimpered above a tiny sound that cut through my rage. He needed me too. The door creaked open again, and my pulse spiked. No footsteps, just the soft rustle of fabric. Then Rachel's voice, low and urgent, hissed from the hallway. "I told you she's not here. Check the east wing." My heart shattered. She was back, still hunting me, still lying. The pain was raw, like a wound torn open. Abigail's hand tightened, and I knew we couldn't stay hidden forever. Something worse was coming, and it was closer than I thought. Rachel's whisper lingered in the air, sharp and cold. like a blade I couldn't dodge. My chest burned, each breath shallow and jagged. Abigail's small frame trembled beside me, her fingers clutching mine so tight I felt her pulse racing. The hospital bed's underside pressed against my back, the metal frame biting into my skin. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the ache inside. My sister was out there directing someone to hunt me, and I was trapped, a new mom with 2 kids depending on me, unable to move. The hallway outside buzzed with activity nurses' voices blending into a dull hum, but Rachel's presence felt like a spotlight. Her shoes clicked softly, pacing just beyond the curtain. I pictured her face, those familiar hazel eyes, the freckles we shared from Mom now twisted with secrets. My mind churned, grasping for a reason, any reason she'd do this. The note Abigail found, meet at hospital. Bring the cash gnawed at me. Was Rachel desperate, blackmailed, or had she chosen this, trading me for her own escape? Abigail's voice, barely audible, broke my spiral. Mom, she was crying last night, at her house. I heard her through the door. My heart twisted. Crying, I wanted to cling to that, to believe Rachel was trapped, not cruel. But her words on the phone, her urgency now painted a different story. I squeezed Abigail's hand, my throat too tight to respond. My daughter shouldn't be carrying this spying, hiding, piecing together betrayal at 8 years old. Guilt flooded me. Had I failed her, dragging her into a world where even family couldn't be trusted? The curtain shifted, and Rachel's voice came closer, low and frantic. I checked the room. She's gone. Maybe she's with the baby in the nursery. My blood froze. She was lying, covering for me, or setting a trap. The nursery. My son was right here. His soft breaths, a faint comfort above us. Was she sending someone there to throw them off? Or was she planning something worse? My hands shook, itching to grab him to run, but the cramped space and Abigail's fear rooted me. A new voice answered, male, smooth, but clipped. You sure? We don't have time for mistakes. My stomach lurched. It wasn't the man with the boots, but someone else, someone new. How many people were after me? Rachel's response was sharp. I'm sure. Just go. The man grunted, his footsteps fading, but Rachel stayed, her breathing uneven. I pictured her standing there, phone in hand, torn between guilt and whatever had pulled her into this. I wanted to hate her, to cut her out of my heart, but the image of her crying, the sister who'd once promised to protect me, wouldn't let go. My mind flashed to a memory I'd buried. 2 years ago, Rachel had shown up at my place, shaken with a bruise on her wrist. She'd brushed it off as a clumsy fall, but her eyes had darted, avoiding mine. I'd pushed, asked if someone hurt her, but she'd shut down, saying I worried too much. Was that bruise tied to this, to Nathan's debts, to the cash she needed now? The questions piled up, each one heavier, but no answers came. All I had was the sting of her betrayal, raw and relentless. Abigail shifted her bear, slipping to the floor with a soft thud. I tensed, my heart leaping to my throat. Rachel's pacing stopped. What was that? She muttered, her voice sharp. My pulse roared, drowning out everything else. Had she heard? The curtain rustled, and I imagined her peering under the bed, finding us curled up like frightened animals. Abigail's eyes widened, her hand flying to cover her mouth. I grabbed the bear, pulling it close, praying the shadows hid us. Rachel's shoes scuffed closer, inches from the bed's edge, and my body screamed to move, to fight, but fear paralyzed me. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, like I was drowning in my own panic. My son stirred above, a tiny whimper escaping him. My heart shattered. He was so vulnerable, so new, and I couldn't even hold him. Rachel's betrayal wasn't just about me. It was about him, about Abigail, about the family I'd fought to protect. Anger surged hot and fierce, but it was tangled with sorrow. I'd lost my sister not to distance or time, but to something darker, something I couldn't yet name. Rachel's phone buzzed again, and she answered in a hushed tone. "I did what you asked. She's not here. Now what?" The words were a punch, confirming her role in this nightmare. Whoever was on the line murmured something I couldn't hear, but Rachel's voice cracked. "Please, just leave me out of it now. Leave her out." My fists clenched. She was begging for herself, not for me, not for my kids. The pain was unbearable, a mix of rage and grief that threatened to swallow me whole. The door creaked open, and a loud crash echoed from the hallway like metal hitting the floor. Rachel gasped, her shoes retreating quickly. "What was that?" she said, her voice high and tense. The noise grew shouts, footsteps, a nurse calling for help. My mind raced. Was it a distraction? A trap? Abigail's eyes met mine, filled with a fear that mirrored my own. Whatever was happening out there, it was pulling Rachel away, but it wasn't over. The weight of her betrayal pressed harder, and I knew the worst was still coming. The crash in the hallway sent a jolt through me, my body tensing against the cold floor. Abigail's hand clamped mine, her nails biting into my palm. The hospital's sterile hum was drowned out by shouts, and the clatter of metal like a cart had flipped. Nurses called out their voices sharp with urgency, but I couldn't make out the words. Rachel's footsteps had vanished, swallowed by the chaos, leaving an eerie quiet in our room. My son's soft coos from the bassinet above felt like a lifeline, but the weight of Rachel's betrayal crushed me. I wanted to crawl out to grab him and Abigail and run, but my legs felt like lead, my body still raw from giving birth. Abigail's eyes, wide and glassy, searched mine. "Mom, we have to move," she whispered, her voice shaking but firm. I shook my head, my throat tight. "Move where?" The hallway sounded like a war zone, and Rachel's last words, "Please, just leave me out of it," echoed in my skull. She was gone, but the danger wasn't. I could feel it heavy and close, like a storm about to break. My heart raced, torn between staying hidden and protecting my kids. Abigail tugged my hand, insistent, but before I could decide, the curtain snapped open with a sharp rustle. My breath caught. Heavy boots thudded against the tile, the same ones from earlier, deliberate and slow. The man was back. My pulse roared, drowning out the distant chaos. Abigail froze, her bear pressed tight to her chest, its worn fur matted with dust. The boots stopped near the bed, and a shadow loomed, stretching across the floor. I bit my lip, tasting blood, willing my son to stay quiet. His tiny breaths were steady, but every second felt like a gamble. The man's voice, low and gravelly, cut through the silence. "She's not here, but the kid's in the crib. We'll wait." My stomach dropped. He was talking about my son. My newborn, barely a day old, lying defenseless above us. My hands shook, rage and terror colliding in my chest. Wait. For what? For me to show myself, for Rachel to come back. I wanted to scream, to lunge at him, but Abigail's trembling kept me grounded. Her eyes pleaded with me to stay still, but every fiber of me screamed to protect my baby. The man shifted, his boots creaking, and I heard the faint clink of something metal, a belt buckle maybe, or worse. My mind flashed to the worst possibilities, each one a knife to my heart. Then another voice joined, softer, but urgent. "Rachel." My blood ran cold. "Vince, I told you she's not in this wing. Let's go before security gets here." My heart shattered all over again. Vince? So that was his name. And Rachel was with him right here in my room. Her voice was tight, like she was trying to sound convincing, but it didn't matter. She was helping him, guiding him while my kids and I hid like animals. The betrayal was a physical pain clawing at my chest, stealing my breath. Vince snorted, his tone dripping with disdain. "You're too jumpy, Rachel. Nathan said she'd be here. You want out? Then make sure we find her." Nathan. The name hit like a punch, knocking the air from my lungs. My ex-husband, the man who'd left us drowning in his debts, was behind this. My mind reeled, memories flooding back, his late nights, his lies, the way he'd disappear for days. I'd thought he was gone for good, a ghost I'd buried. But he was here, pulling strings, endangering my children. The room spun, my vision blurring with tears I couldn't afford to shed. Rachel's voice cracked. "Nathan's wrong. She's not here. Please, Vince, let's just Vince cut her off." His voice sharp. "Enough! Check the bathroom, now!" Rachel hesitated, her shoes scuffing the floor, and I pictured her face, torn and guilty. But she moved her steps quick toward the small bathroom attached to the room. My heart pounded so loud, I was sure they'd hear it. Abigail's hand was slick with sweat, her body rigid. I wanted to whisper to her to promise we'd be okay, but the words wouldn't come. All I could feel was the weight of Nathan's name, the sting of Rachel's complicity, and the terror of Vince's presence. The bathroom door creaked open, and Rachel's footsteps paused. Nothing she said, her voice flat. Vince grunted, unsatisfied, and his boots paced closer to the bassinet. My blood turned to ice. I imagined him leaning over my son, his shadow falling across that tiny, perfect face. My hands clenched, nails digging into my palms. I couldn't stay here, couldn't let him touch my baby. But Abigail's grip tightened, her eyes, desperate, silently begging me to wait. My chest ached, torn between her fear and my instinct to act. Vince's voice dropped, almost a growl. "Nathan's debts don't vanish, Rachel. You know that. She's the leverage. Her or the kid." My heart stopped. Leverage. They were using me, my son, to settle Nathan's sins. The truth was a tidal wave crashing over me, drowning me in shock and pain. My family, my safety, my life, all pawns in a game I hadn't even known was being played. Rachel's silence was deafening, her lack of protest a final betrayal. The room felt like it was closing in the air, too thick to breathe, and I knew I was seconds from breaking. Vince's words hung in the air, heavy and venomous, each syllable a fresh wound. My body shook, pressed against the dusty floor, Abigail's trembling hand, the only thing anchoring me. The hospital room felt like a trap, its walls shrinking, the buzz of the lights a mocking hum. Rachel's silence screamed louder than any confession, her betrayal now a raw, bleeding truth. My son's tiny gurgles from the bassinet above twisted my heart, each sound a reminder of how close danger loomed. I wanted to claw my way out to shield him, but fear and shock pinned me down. Rachel's shoes shuffled, hesitant, as if she might speak, but Vince's voice cut through again, colder now. "You're wasting time. Nathan said she's weak, easy to break. Check the closet." My breath hitched, a new wave of pain crashing over me. Weak, easy to break. Nathan's words, spoken through this stranger, felt like a public shaming, stripping me bare. He'd known me, loved me once, and now he was painting me as prey, feeding me to wolves to save himself. My chest burned, the humiliation searing deeper than Rachel's lies. Abigail's eyes met mine, wide with horror, and I saw the weight of those words hit her too. She'd heard her father's name, felt the sting of his cruelty, even if she didn't fully understand. Her small face crumpled, and I wanted to pull her close to erase what she'd heard. But the space under the bed was a prison. My hands trembled rage and heartbreak, warring inside me. Nathan hadn't just abandoned us, he'd weaponized our past, turning my love, my trust, into a noose. The closet door creaked open. Rachel's movements slow, almost reluctant. Empty. She mumbled, her voice barely audible, like she was crumbling under the guilt. Vince scoffed, his boots pacing again, each step a hammer against my nerves. "You're useless, you know that," Nathan swore. "You'd deliver her." "Deliver me." The phrase was a gut punch, reducing me to a transaction, a debt to be paid. My mind reeled, piecing together the ugliness. Nathan's gambling, his debts, his disappearance, they weren't just mistakes. They were a chain, and I was the final link, dragged into his ruin. A faint clatter came from the hallway, the chaos outside still simmering, but in here, time felt frozen, every second stretching into agony. Vince stopped pacing, his shadow shifting closer to the bassinet. My heart lurched, a primal scream building in my throat. Not my son, not him. I bit my tongue, the metallic taste grounding me. But the urge to act was overwhelming. Abigail's hand tightened, her breath hitching, and I knew she felt it too, the terror of losing everything. Rachel's voice broke the silence, small and desperate. "Vince, please." I did what I could. Nathan didn't tell me she'd be this hard to find. My blood boiled. Hard to find. She was talking about me like I was a lost wallet, not her sister. Not the mother hiding with her daughter, fighting to survive. The casualness of it, the way she distanced herself, was a fresh betrayal, sharper than before. I pictured her face, the one I'd trusted through every storm, now twisted with fear and complicity. How had we come to this? Vince laughed, a low, cruel sound that sent chills down my spine. "You think Nathan cares about your excuses? He's got his own mess to clean up. And you..." He paused, his voice dropping to a hiss. "You're in too deep to back out now." Rachel gasped, a soft, broken sound, and I hated how it stirred pity in me. I wanted to hate her, to cut her out of my heart. But the image of her crying, the sister who'd once promised to protect me, wouldn't fade. My emotions tangled, fury, grief, disbelief, each one tearing me apart. Abigail shifted her knee, brushing mine, and a small object fell from her pocket, landing with a faint thud. My heart stopped. It was a crumpled piece of paper, the note she'd mentioned, now lying in the dim light under the bed. I grabbed it, my hands shaking, and unfolded it just enough to see the words, "Meet at hospital. Bring the cash." The handwriting wasn't Rachel's. It was Nathan's. My breath caught the truth, slamming into me like a freight train. He'd planned this, orchestrated every step, using Rachel as his pawn and me as his sacrifice. The note was proof, a tangible piece of his betrayal, and it broke something inside me. Vince's boots turned, his shadow looming larger, and I heard the faint rustle of fabric, like he was reaching for something. My son whimpered a tiny, helpless sound, and my vision blurred with tears. The room felt like it was collapsing, the weight of Nathan's cruelty. Rachel's complicity, my own blindness crushing me. Abigail's eyes were wet. Her small body curled tight, and I knew she was breaking too. We were out of time, out of hiding places, and the truth, Nathan's betrayal, Rachel's role, my own blindness, was a wound too deep to bear. I was drowning, my heart shattered with no way out. The note in my hand felt like a live wire, Nathan's handwriting burning through the fog of my fear. My heart was a wreck, splintered by Rachel's betrayal and Vince's threats. But Abigail's quiet sobs beside me snapped something into focus. My daughter, my son, they were all I had, and I'd let Nathan's poison seep into our lives for too long. The hospital room's sterile chill pressed against my skin, the bassinet's soft creaks a reminder of what was at stake. I couldn't stay under this bed cowering while Vince circled like a vulture. Not anymore. Abigail's eyes, red and searching, met mine in the dim light. "Mom, what do we do?" she whispered, her voice small but steady. I swallowed hard, my throat raw from holding back tears. The chaos in the hallway had quieted, but Vince's boots still echoed faintly, pacing near the door. Rachel was gone, her last plea fading into the noise. I tucked the note into my pocket, its weight a strange anchor. "We're getting out of here," I said, my voice low but firm. "But we do it smart." I shifted my sore body, protesting, as I peered through the curtain's gap. Vince was near the doorway, his back to us, muttering into a phone. The room felt less like a cage now, more like a battlefield I could navigate. My son's tiny breaths steadied me, each one a reason to fight. I'd been passive too long, trusting Rachel, ignoring Nathan's shadow. "No more." Abigail nodded, her bear clutched tight, and I saw a spark of her courage, the same instinct that had warned me to hide. She was my strength, and I'd be hers. I scanned the room, my mind racing for a plan. The bathroom door Rachel had checked was slightly ajar, leading to a narrow supply closet beyond it. If we could slip in there, we might find a way to the nurse's station or a phone. My pulse quickened, not just with fear, but with a flicker of resolve. I'd raised Abigail alone, worked double shifts, rebuilt our life after Nathan's mess. I wasn't weak, no matter what he'd told Vince. I was a mother, and that was enough. "Sweetie," I whispered, "when I say go, we crawl to the bathroom. Stay low, don't look back." Abigail's lips trembled, but she nodded, her trust in me, a fire in my chest. I waited, listening as Vince's voice grew sharper on the phone. "Yeah, she's gotta be close. Keep security busy." My stomach twisted. Security was distracted, just like the crash in the hallway. This was our chance, but it was slim. I squeezed Abigail's hand, counting her breaths, syncing them with mine. The bassinet creaked, and my heart lurched. My son was stirring, his soft whimpers threatening to draw Vince's attention. I froze, every muscle taut, but Abigail's hand steadied me. "He's okay, Mom," she mouthed, her eyes fierce. I nodded, swallowing the panic. I couldn't carry him yet, not without making noise, but I'd come back for him. The thought tore at me, but I pushed it down. One step at a time, I had to get Abigail safe, then him. Vince turned his boots, scuffing the tile, and I held my breath, praying he'd stay distracted. The phone call ended, and he cursed under his breath, his shadow shifting away from the door. "Now. Go," I hissed, and Abigail moved silent and quick, her small body sliding across the floor. I followed, my knees scraping the tile, the note crinkling in my pocket. The bathroom was 5 feet away, but it felt like a mile, every inch a gamble. My body ached, still raw from labor, but adrenaline drowned it out. We reached the bathroom, slipping inside, just as Vince's boots turned back. The door was half open, the supply closet's outline visible in the dim light. My heart raced, not just with fear, but with a growing fire. I wasn't just running, I was choosing to fight, to outsmart them. Abigail pressed against me, her bear a soft weight between us, and I felt her strength feeding mine. We weren't prey. Not anymore. The supply closet was a tight, dim cocoon, the air thick with the sharp tang of bleach and antiseptic. Abigail pressed against me, her small frame trembling but resolute, her bear tucked under her arm. The door clicked shut behind us, muffling Vince's growl from the hospital room. My heart still raced, but it wasn't just fear. Now it was a pulse of something fiercer, something I hadn't felt in years. I was done hiding, done letting Nathan's shadow dictate my life. My son was still out there, vulnerable in his bassinet, and that thought fueled every move I made. I scanned the closet, my eyes adjusting to the faint glow of a flickering bulb. Shelves loomed with stacks of towels, gauze, and plastic bins, the space barely wide enough for us to stand. A narrow vent high on the wall caught my eye, too small to climb through, but a reminder that air, at least, could escape. Abigail's breath was shallow, her eyes darting to the door. "Mom, what if he checks here?" she whispered, her voice a thread of courage woven with worry. I knelt to her level, my sore knees protesting, and met her gaze. "We're not waiting for him to find us," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "We're getting help." Her eyes widened, a flicker of hope breaking through her fear. I'd spent years shielding her from the worst, Nathan's abandonment, the late-night bill collectors, my own quiet tears. But now she was part of this fight, and I wouldn't let her feel powerless. Not like I had for so long. My hand brushed the note in my pocket, Nathan's handwriting, a silent taunt. It wasn't just evidence, it was a spark igniting a resolve I'd buried under years of survival. I stood my back, brushing a shelf, and spotted a clipboard hanging on the wall, its attached pen glinting faintly. An idea formed, small but sharp. "Abigail, you said you wrote down that car's license plate, right?" I asked, keeping my voice low. She nodded, fishing a tiny notebook from her pocket, its pages crinkled from our crawl. Her journal, her weird things list, was more than a kid's scribbles. It was our weapon. I took the notebook, my fingers trembling not from fear, but from purpose. "We're leaving a message," I said, grabbing the clipboard. I scrawled a note, my handwriting messy but clear. "Woman and daughter in danger room 304. Man named Vince tied to Nathan. License plate in girl's journal. Call police." I added the hospital's main number memorized from my admission papers and tore the sheet free. Abigail watched, her lips parting in awe. "Who's it for?" she asked. "The nurses?" I said, folding the note tightly. "Someone out there isn't part of this." My mind flicked to Clara, the nurse who'd dismissed us earlier. She was careless, but not cruel. If I could get this to her or anyone, it might tip the scales. The closet had a second door barely visible behind a stack of boxes, likely leading to a service corridor. My pulse quickened. It was a risk, but staying put was worse. I pushed the boxes aside, my arms straining, and tested the handle. Unlocked. A sliver of hope cracked through my fear. I turned to Abigail, her bear now dangling from her hand, her face set with a determination that mirrored mine. "You stay right behind me," I said. "If I say run, you run." "Got it." She nodded, her small hand gripping my shirt. I eased the door open, the hinge creaking faintly, and peered into a dim hallway lined with carts and cleaning supplies. It was empty, but voices echoed from the main ward, sharp and urgent. Vince was still out there, and my son was still in that room. My chest tightened, but I pushed the fear down. I'd get him back. I would. We slipped into the corridor, the tile cold under my socks. Abigail's sneakers silent behind me. The note was clutched in my hand, a lifeline to the world beyond this nightmare. I spotted a rolling cart piled with linens, its lower shelf just low enough to hide something small. I knelt, tucking the note beneath a folded sheet, and whispered to Abigail, "If we get caught, you find this cart. You give it to Clara." Her eyes shone with understanding, and for a moment I saw the woman she'd become: brave, sharp, unyielding. The corridor stretched ahead, leading to a glass door marked "Staff Only." Beyond it, I glimpsed the edge of the nurses' station, its fluorescent glow a beacon. My heart pounded, not just with the risk, but with a quiet thrill. I was moving, choosing fighting. Nathan had called me weak, but he was wrong. Every scar, every sleepless night, Every time I'd pulled Abigail close and kept going, that was my strength. I glanced at her, her small frame dwarfed by the hallway, and felt a surge of pride. She was my reason, my fire. A sudden shout from the main ward froze us. "Check the back rooms." It was Vince, his voice ablade. My breath hitched, but my resolve didn't waver. I grabbed Abigail's hand and pulled her toward the glass door. The nurse's station was close, maybe 20 feet away. Clara's voice drifted through complaining about a spilled tray. She was there, oblivious but within reach. I tightened my grip on the note's words in my mind, their weight grounding me. This wasn't just escape. It was defiance, a line drawn in the sand. The glass door swung shut behind us, its soft thud swallowed by the hum of the nurse's station. My socks slipped on the polished tile, Abigail's sneakers squeaking faintly as she clung to my side. The note I'd left on the cart felt like a fragile seed planted, but not yet sprouted. My chest was tight, not just from the risk we'd taken, but from the shift inside me, a quiet, stubborn refusal to let Nathan's shadow win. The station was a blur of monitors and clipboards, Clara's voice cutting through complaining about a shift change. I scanned for her, my pulse, a steady drum ready to hand over Abigail's journal and beg for help. Abigail's hand was warm in mine, her bear tucked under her arm, its worn fur a reminder of the life we'd built. The corridor we'd left behind felt like a battlefield, Vince's shout still echoing in my ears. But here, in this fluorescent-lit chaos, I felt a flicker of control, like I'd clawed back a piece of myself. I steered Abigail toward a corner near the station where a water cooler hummed softly, its plastic cups stacked neatly. "Stay close," I whispered, my eyes darting for a phone or a friendly face. Clara was at the desk, her back to us, flipping through a chart. I took a step, ready to call her name, when a new voice stopped me cold. "Emily." It was Rachel, her tone sharp with disbelief coming from a side hallway. My heart sank, my resolve wavering. She stood there, her coat half on her face, pale and streaked with mascara. Abigail stiffened her fingers, digging into my arm. I wanted to run to scream, but my feet were rooted, the weight of her presence pinning me in place. Rachel's eyes widened, flickering between me and Abigail, then to the journal in my hand. "You're here," she said, her voice cracking like she hadn't expected to find us. My throat tightened, anger and hurt surging, but I held it back, my grip on Abigail steady. "Stay away," I said, my voice low, each word deliberate. Her betrayal was still raw, her role in Vince's hunt, a wound that hadn't stopped bleeding. But her expression, shock, guilt, something softer through me. Was she surprised we'd escaped, or something else? Clara turned, finally noticing us, her brow furrowing. "Rachel, what's going on?" she asked, her tone more curious than concerned. I seized the moment, stepping forward, my voice cutting through. "Clara, we need security. Now. There's a man, Vince, in my room. He's dangerous." Clara blinked her pen, pausing mid-air like she was processing a bad joke. Rachel's face drained of color, her hands twisting the edge of her coat. "Emily, wait," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I didn't look at her. I couldn't. I held up Abigail's journal, its pages creased but powerful. "This has his license plate, everything. Call the police." Clara hesitated, glancing at Rachel, then back at me. "You're serious?" she asked, her skepticism grating. I nodded, my jaw tight, every second stretching like a lifetime. Abigail pressed closer, her small frame a reminder of why I was fighting. Clara reached for the phone, her movement slow like she still wasn't sure. My heart pounded, hope and fear colliding. Had the note on the cart been found? Was help coming? Rachel took a step toward us, her hands raised like she was approaching a wounded animal. "Emily, listen to me," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't want this, I swear." Her words were a knife twisting in the wound she'd already carved. I wanted to believe her, to see the sister who'd held my hand through Mom's funeral, but the image of her with Vince, her lies, was too vivid. "You led him to us," I said, my voice breaking not with sadness, but with a cold, hard truth. Abigail's hand tightened, her silence louder than any words. Clara was on the phone now, murmuring to someone, her eyes flicking to us. Rachel's gaze dropped to the floor, her shoulders slumping. "It was Nathan," she said, so quiet I almost missed it. "He threatened me, said he'd hurt you if I didn't help." My stomach twisted, Nathan's name a poison that kept spreading. But Rachel's confession didn't erase her choices, her whispered directions to Vince. I shook my head, my voice steady despite the ache. "You could have warned me. You chose him." The air between us was thick, heavy with years of trust now shattered. Abigail's journal felt heavier in my hand, its pages a testament to her courage, to our survival. Clara hung up her face, uneasy. "Security's coming," she said, glancing at Rachel like she sensed the tension. I nodded, my resolve hardening. I'd taken the first step, exposed Vince, and now Rachel's role was out in the open. But the victory was hollow, tainted by the cost. Rachel's eyes met mine, pleading, but I looked away, my heart a tangled mess of anger and loss. The shout from the ward faded, replaced by the steady hum of the nurse's station, but my nerves stayed taut, coiled like a spring. Abigail's small hand rested in mine, her journal now tucked in my pocket. Its weight a quiet reminder of our defiance. Clara's gaze lingered on us, her confusion shifting to something heavier, like she was piecing together the jagged edges of our story. Rachel stood, frozen, her coat slipping off one shoulder, her eyes fixed on the floor. The air between us was brittle, ready to crack with the smallest word. I wanted to feel triumphant, to savor the step I'd taken, but the cost was sinking in heavy and cold. A security guard appeared at the station, his radio crackling with static. Derek, his badge read his face, lined with the kind of weariness that came from long shifts. "What's this about a threat?" he asked, his voice gruff but not unkind. Clara gestured toward me, her earlier skepticism gone. "She says a man's after her. Room 304. Something about a license plate." I straightened, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "His name's Vince. He's working with my ex, Nathan. My daughter saw his car. It's all in her journal." Derek's eyes narrowed, flicking to Abigail, who stood close, her bear now dangling by one paw. "You got this journal?" he asked. I nodded, pulling it out, its pages soft from her small hands. I opened it to the page with the license plate, her careful handwriting, a stark contrast to the chaos around us. Derek studied it, his brow furrowing, then glanced at Rachel. "You know anything about this?" he asked, his tone sharp. Rachel flinched, her hands twisting together, but she didn't answer. Her silence was a wall shutting me out, and it hurt more than any words could. I wanted to shake her, to demand why she'd let Nathan pull her into this, but the weight of Abigail's trust held me back. My daughter's eyes were on me, steady despite the fear, and I couldn't let her see me break. Derek scribbled something on a notepad, then spoke into his radio, his voice low. "Check room 304. Male suspect, possibly armed. Get a unit to run a plate." My heart lifted, a fragile hope taking root, but Rachel's quiet gasp snuffed it out. Her eyes met mine for a split second, raw with something, guilt maybe, or fear, before she looked away. Clara stepped closer, her voice softer now. "Emily, you and your daughter should wait in the break room. It's safer." I nodded, my throat tight, and guided Abigail toward a door behind the station. Rachel didn't move, her stillness a heavy presence, like a ghost of the sister I'd known. As we passed, Her hand twitched like she wanted to reach out, but she didn't. I didn't stop. The break room was small, its walls lined with vending machines and a sagging couch, the air stale with coffee and exhaustion. Abigail sat beside me, her bear on her lap, her fingers tracing its worn seams. I wanted to talk to her, to ask what she was feeling, but the words wouldn't come. My mind was a tangle of relief and dread, the journal's evidence, a small victory overshadowed by Rachel's betrayal. I'd acted taken control, but the cost was etched in the quiet between us. Abigail's courage had carried us this far, but she was still a child caught in a mess that wasn't hers. Guilt gnawed at me sharp and relentless. Had I been too trusting, too blind to let Nathan's poison reach her? The door opened and a woman entered, her badge reading Lisa Detective. Her dark hair was pulled back, her eyes sharp but kind. "Emily, I'm with the police. We've got your note from the cart and we're running the plate," she said, her voice calm but direct. "Can you tell me about Vince and Nathan?" I took a breath, my voice steady but laced with the weight of everything. "Nathan's my ex. He left us years ago, debts piling up. Vince is his muscle, I think. They're after me to settle his score." Lisa nodded, jotting notes, her gaze flicking to Abigail. "And your sister?" My chest tightened. Rachel's name a bruise I couldn't touch. "She's helping them." I said the words, bitter but true. "I don't know why." Lisa's expression didn't change, but her eyes softened like she'd seen this kind of pain before. She turned to Abigail, her voice gentle. "You did good, kid, writing that plate down." Abigail's lips curved a faint smile, but her eyes stayed heavy, caring too much for an 8-year-old. Lisa stepped out to make a call, leaving us in the break room's quiet. The vending machine's hum was the only sound, a dull drone that couldn't drown out my thoughts. I'd pushed the truth into the open, set things in motion, but Rachel's silence lingered, a wound that wouldn't close. Abigail leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, her bear soft against my arm. I wanted to promise her safety, to erase the fear, but all I could do was hold her close. The fight wasn't over, and the weight of what I'd started pressed down, leaving me hollow, waiting for the next blow. The break room's fluorescent light cast a soft glow over Abigail, asleep on the couch, her small chest rising and falling. Her bear rested on her lap, its worn fur catching the light, a quiet testament to her strength. My newborn son dozed in a portable crib nearby, his tiny fingers curled, unaware of the storm we'd weathered. The hospital's hum was distant now, muffled by the thick walls, and for the first time in hours I could breathe without fear clawing at me. I sat on a hard plastic chair, a styrofoam cup of lukewarm coffee in my hands, its bitter taste grounding me in this fragile calm. I was 32, a single mom, who'd faced too many battles, but this one had cracked me open. Vince's arrest, confirmed by Lisa just minutes ago, lifted a weight I hadn't realized I'd carried. Nathan was in custody, his schemes unraveling, but the victory felt hollow, overshadowed by Rachel's absence. She'd left the hospital, Lisa said, without a word, her silence a final cut. I stared at the coffee's dark surface, my reflection warped, and wondered when I'd lost the sister I'd loved. The door creaked, and Sarah slipped in, my best friend since college, her lawyer's briefcase tucked under her arm. Her dark curls were messy, her eyes tired but warm. She'd driven across town the moment I'd called, no questions asked. "You holding up?" she asked, her voice soft, as she sat beside me. I nodded, my throat tight, not trusting myself to speak. Sarah didn't push, just opened her bag and pulled out a legal pad, scribbling notes about restraining orders and police reports. Her presence was a lifeline, steady and sure. I glanced at Abigail, her face peaceful in sleep, and a memory surfaced unbidden. When she was 4, we'd spent a summer evening catching fireflies in a mason jar, her laughter brighter than the stars. I'd promised her then that I'd always keep her safe, a vow I'd nearly broken today. My chest ached, not with pain, but with a quiet pride. She'd saved us her sharp eyes and quick thinking, outwitting dangers I'd been blind to. I set the coffee down, my hands steady, and realized I wasn't the same woman who'd crawled under that bed. Fear hadn't won. Sarah's pen paused her gaze following mine to Abigail. "She's incredible, Em," she said, her voice low. "You raised her that way." I swallowed the words, sinking deep. I'd spent years doubting myself, measuring every choice against Nathan's abandonment, Rachel's secrets. But Abigail's courage, her trust in me, was proof I'd done something right. I leaned back, the chair creaking, and let that truth settle. The hospital, once a maze of threats, now felt like a place I'd survived, a chapter I'd outrun. I stood, my legs stiff, and walked to the crib, brushing my fingers over my son's soft cheek. His warmth was a promise, a future I'd fight for. Sarah watched, her smile faint but knowing. "You're stronger than you think," she said, echoing a truth I was starting to believe. I nodded, my eyes on my son, and felt a shift inside me, not loud or dramatic, but a quiet certainty. Nathan's debts, Rachel's choices, Vince's threats, they'd scarred me, but they hadn't defined me. I was more than my wounds. The break room's quiet wrapped around me like a worn blanket, softening the edges of the day's wounds. Abigail's hand rested in mine, her fingers slack in sleep, her bear nestled against her side. My son's gentle breaths filled the crib, each one a small miracle in the stillness. Sarah had stepped out to make a call, leaving me alone with my kids and the weight of what we'd survived. The hospital's distant clamor felt like another world, one I'd walked through and left behind. I leaned back, the plastic chair cool against my shoulders, and let my eyes trace the room's plain walls, searching for something to hold on to. A small table in the corner caught my attention, its surface cluttered with dog-eared magazines and a single potted plant, its leaves curling at the edges. Beside it, a handwritten note was pinned to a corkboard, its ink faded but legible. "Thinking of you. Evelyn," it read, signed with a nurse's name I didn't recognize. Evelyn, the older patient from the ward, the one who'd quietly alerted a nurse during the chaos. Her kindness, a stranger's grace, had been a lifeline, and now this note felt like a whisper from her, a reminder that goodness could still exist. I stood, careful not to wake Abigail, and crossed to the table. My fingers brushed the note, its paper soft from time, and a memory stirred, not of pain, but of my mother. She'd loved plants, tending them with a patience I'd never mastered. After she passed, I'd let her garden wilt too, overwhelmed to care. But here in this cramped room, that plant's stubborn green felt like her voice urging me to keep growing. I picked up a nearby water bottle, its plastic crinkling, and poured a thin stream into the pot, watching the soil darken. It was small, almost nothing, but it felt like a promise to myself, to my kids. I returned to the couch, my movements slow, and sat beside Abigail. Her hair fell across her face, and I tucked it behind her ear, my touch light. She'd seen too much today, carried too much, but her strength had reshaped me. I thought of the years ahead, the questions she'd ask about Rachel, about Nathan, about why trust could break. I didn't have all the answers, but I had this moment, this quiet, and it was enough to start. My hand rested on hers, and I felt a shift, not a grand revelation, but a steady calm, like a river finding its course. The door opened softly, and a woman entered, her badge reading Tara, social worker. Her glasses perched low on her nose, her smile gentle but professional. "Just checking in," she said, her voice low to keep from waking Abigail. "How's she doing?" I glanced at my daughter, her face soft in sleep, and my voice came out quiet but sure. "She's tough. Tougher than me sometimes." Tara nodded, jotting something in a notebook, then met my eyes. "And you?" This was a lot. Her question hung there, simple but piercing, and for a moment, I didn't know how to answer. I looked at my son, his tiny chest moving, and the truth settled in. "I'm still here." I said the words, plain but heavy. "That's enough for now." Tara's smile widened like she understood, and she handed me a card with a counseling hotline, her fingers brushing mine. "For when you're ready," she said, then slipped out, leaving the room to its stillness. I tucked the card in my pocket, not a fix, but a step a door I could open later. I leaned my head back, the ceiling's tiles blurring, as my thoughts drifted. Rachel's absence was a quiet ache, not sharp anymore, but present, like a bruise I'd learned to live with. Nathan's schemes, Vince's threats, they'd tried to break me, but I'd bent instead, shaped by Abigail's courage, Sarah's loyalty, even Evelyn's small act. I wasn't whole, not yet, but I was enough. My eyes settled on Abigail, her bear cradled close, and a soft warmth spread through me. We'd survived not just today, but every day before, and we'd keep going. The morning light filtered through my kitchen curtains, soft, and golden painting stripes across the wooden table. I sat with a mug of tea, its steam curling upward, the faint chamomile scent calming my nerves. Abigail was at school, her backpack heavier with new books, her steps lighter than they'd been a week ago. My son nestled in a bouncer by the window, gurgled at a dangling toy, his eyes bright with curiosity. Our small apartment, cluttered with toys and unfolded laundry, felt like a sanctuary, a place we'd reclaimed. I was 32, a mom of two, and for the first time in days, I could hear my own thoughts without fear drowning them out. It had been a week since the hospital, since Vince's arrest and Nathan's charges. The police had called yesterday, confirming Nathan would face trial for conspiracy and extortion. Rachel was in therapy somewhere across town, piecing herself back together. I hadn't seen her, hadn't answered her texts, but the silence wasn't anger anymore. Just space, a boundary I'd learned to draw. My fingers traced the mug's handle, its warmth steadying me, and I realized how much had shifted inside. I wasn't the woman who'd hidden under that bed trembling anymore. The kitchen radio hummed faintly, a soft country tune filling the room. I'd started leaving it on a small habit to break the quiet that used to feel heavy. Abigail had noticed humming along yesterday while she colored at the same table. Her drawings were brighter now, full of suns and trees, a far cry from the tense lines she'd scribbled in the hospital. I'd enrolled her in counseling, a gentle woman named Kate, who listened as much as she spoke. Abigail hadn't opened up fully yet, but she'd come home last week with a shy smile saying Kate had a dog named Biscuit. It was small, but it was enough. I stood crossing to the counter, where a small notebook lay open, its pages blank, except for a single line I'd written last night, things I'm grateful for. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a quiet way to anchor myself. I picked up a pen, its weight familiar, and added a new entry. Abigail's laugh. My son's tiny toes. The way the light hits this room. Each word felt like a stitch mending something torn. I'd spent years running from Nathan's debts, from my own doubts, but this list was a way of standing still, of choosing what to carry forward. The doorbell buzzed, soft but startling, and I set the pen down. It was Sarah dropping off a stack of legal papers, her smile warm as she stepped inside. "You look good, Em," she said, setting the papers on the table. I laughed, a small, genuine sound, and gestured to my messy bun and stained sweatshirt. "Sure I do," I said, but her words settled deep. Sarah had seen me at my lowest, and her belief in me was a mirror showing a strength I was starting to recognize. We sat the papers untouched for now and talked about small things, her new case, my son's first smile, the neighbor's loud lawnmower. It was ordinary, beautifully so, and I let myself sink into it. Sarah's voice, steady and familiar, reminded me of the community I'd found, not just in her, but in the hospital staff, in Evelyn's note, in Tara's quiet support. I'd felt alone for so long, but I wasn't, not really. My hand rested on the table, the tea cooling, and I felt a quiet pride. I'd fought for this moment, this safety, and it was mine. The kitchen clock ticked softly, its rhythm blending with the hum of the refrigerator, a quiet pulse in our home. I stood by the sink, rinsing a plate, the warm water soothing my hands. Abigail's laughter drifted from the living room where she was teaching my son to stack blocks, his tiny giggles, a melody I'd never tire of. It was evening now, the sky outside bruised with dusk, and our apartment glowed with the soft light of a single lamp. I was 32, scarred but steady, and these small moments were my proof of survival. I dried my hands, the towel rough but familiar, and leaned against the counter, my eyes tracing the room. A week ago, I'd been trapped, my world narrowed to fear and betrayal. Nathan's schemes, Rachel's choices, Vince's threats. They'd shaken me, but they hadn't broken me. I'd started a new ritual, sitting on the balcony each night after Abigail's bedtime, staring at the stars. It wasn't grand, just a few minutes of quiet, but it was mine, a space to let the past settle without ruling me. Yesterday, I'd found a letter in the mail, slipped under the door. No stamp. Rachel's handwriting, neat and careful, spelled my name. I hadn't opened it, not ready for her words, but I hadn't thrown it away either. It sat on my dresser, a choice I'd make when the time felt right. Forgiveness wasn't there yet, maybe never would be, but I'd let go of the anger, choosing peace over pain. That choice, small but heavy, was a strength I hadn't known I had. I walked to the living room, my steps soft, and watched Abigail build a wobbly tower, her tongue peeking out in focus. My son clapped his chubby hands, missing each other, and I smiled, the warmth spreading deep. I'd started telling Abigail stories of my childhood, not just the good parts, but the messy ones, my fights with Rachel, my fears, my mistakes. She listened, her eyes wide, and I saw her learning that strength wasn't perfection, but showing up again and again. Those talks were our bridge, tying us closer, healing us both. The balcony called, and I stepped outside, the cool air brushing my face. The city hummed below, distant car horns and laughter weaving together. I leaned on the railing, my hands steady, and looked up. The stars were faint, dimmed by city lights, but they were there, constant and quiet. I thought of Evelyn, her note in the hospital, a stranger who'd seen me when I felt invisible. I thought of Sarah, Tara, even Clara, each a thread in a net that had caught me. I wasn't alone, and that truth was a light I'd carry forward. The lesson came to me slowly, not in a flash, but in the quiet of these nights. Life breaks us not with grand tragedies, but with small, sharp cuts, promises, broken trust, lost fears, fed. But we heal not by erasing the scars, but by choosing what they mean. I'd learned to trust my own voice, to see strength in my flaws, to love my kids fiercely without losing myself. Abigail's courage, my son's innocence, they'd taught me that love wasn't just protection, but belief in them and in me. I stepped back inside, the balcony's chill lingering on my skin, and checked on my kids. Abigail was yawning, her tower toppled, and my son was dozing, his blocks scattered. I carried them to bed, their warmth, a quiet anchor, and sat in the dark, listening to their breaths. The past was behind me, not gone, but no longer in charge. I was here whole in my own way, ready for whatever came next. What's a moment that taught you to trust your own strength? Share it below. I'd love to hear your story. If this moved, you please subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. Your support means the world to me. Thank you for listening, for being here. Keep holding on, and may you find your own quiet light.